Welcome to HayStack Mujer TV! You are here with your host, Rosaura Figueroa Mendoza, Rosa Salvaje, and we have a special guest from San Francisco, from Washington, from El Salvador, from all over the world. We have Freddy Merlos.
That's right, it's me.
What's up, dude? Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey. So what's going on?
Man, so much. So I recently performed poetry in Vallejo.
Yes.
And it was super fun. But it was also eye-opening because I got off the ferry. I started walking into the area where the art gallery was, where we were going to be performing, and they had set up the microphone outside. It's the venue is called El Comalito Collective, and if you have a chance to go to Vallejo, go to El Comalito Collective. They are putting beautiful Central American and Mexican art, and from other places of Latin America together in the same space, which I think is profound in and of itself. Just the fact that those things are cohabitating in the same space. It starts a great dialogue, which I think is important for us to have, especially in these trying times where there's a lot of toxic nationalism. And we're looking to build better solidarity within each other. And so the space was beautiful. It was overflowing with people. Great crew of people out there. I got to perform. Went up there, did my 10 minutes, and by the end, it's like, you know, no dry eyes essentially, and so you could hear a pin drop by the time I finished, and I wasn't expecting that. I thought people would be like, oh, okay, thank you, you know, and but it was really quiet, and then it was like you could hear tears, and then people clapped, and they're like, hey, okay, we're gonna transition and move to the next person. After that part of the event was over, and we started moving into the art gallery to look at the space, before I could go in, there was a lot of people that specifically walked up to me and took a moment to share with me what they thought, or wanted to just mention how they felt about the show, the pieces, and they were Central American, and so it was really touching to hear from them, to see them take it in, what stood out to them, because, and this is something I've been thinking about for a while, when I first started writing, about a year ago, the poems that are specifically going into this book that I'm working on, trying to get done this winter to release. When I first started doing this, I had friends who were academics who looked over what I was writing, and they said, you know, oh, there's just not enough of this, not enough of that. We want more of this type of figurative language, et cetera, et cetera. And some of those critiques were valid, but a lot of them were just like, somehow, you know, they wanted me to bend what I was writing into what they believed Latinx poetry should be. And it dawned on me that there's other poets who are writing beautiful, heartbreaking, personal moments, and that's like their space. And I realized that I was going in a good chunk of what I was putting together was going in a different direction, and that what I was putting together were anthems of the diaspora, and how those need to exist in the canon as well. So yes, we need like the poems of Jessica Salgado, and to know that like there's hope after heartbreak, because man, she's bleeding onto paper and talking about love and loss, and the way people are fat shamed, and women's bodies are sexualized, and the way men take advantage of their construct of what woman should be, and it's at the expense of real women. And it's beautiful. She's a Saudi poet.
Yeah, I saw her in Oakland.
Yeah, and so what she's doing is amazing. And I was like, she's already doing that. So I wanted to add something to the conversation that was talking about other aspects of what we're dealing with. And
it's interesting how you're talking about, you know, you had your writing reviewed by academics or whatever, but really it's like you're the master of your life. You know yourself better than anybody, and your story is yours. And and you're already you're a writer, like you write, you know, so it's all you in my eyes, it's like you're already like. It's like frustrating how people try to let me go to the experts or let me go to the I need that validation.
I saw validation
and I'm not saying that
folks.
you were doing that, but it's
no, I did.
But
I
it's
went to them.
But
I went to them and I said, "Will you read this? Will you tell me if I'm going in the right direction or whatever?" And they were like, "You know what it was that they said to me? They said, we're positive that it's very passionate sounding if you perform it." And I was like, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. It's only worth it if you hear it? Is that what you're saying? I was like, I don't. And so what occurred to me is that as you start to carve your path and you start to improve on the thing that you first created, and you really start to find your voice, at a certain point, what those people are saying doesn't matter because you're not writing for them anyway. You're writing for a group of people who will see themselves reflected in your story. Mm-hmm. Fast forward.
Target audience.
To last week, I was at Fruitvale Village at a Honduran solidarity rally with many, many wonderful people. And Pueblos Sin Fronteras was there, and Café was there, and a bunch of other Oakland-based organizations that work with asylum seekers and Central American migrants. We're standing there, I'm doing my set, and in one of the poems, I mentioned the Garifuna people of Honduras. And there was one lovely, beautiful woman about my mom's age, way in the back, who goes, "Woo!" And it nearly threw me, because I was like, what was that? I couldn't figure it out, but I had to keep going. And then I stepped off stage, we finished what we were doing, and that woman barreled past everyone. And she walked right up to me, and she goes, "You." And I was like, and she gave me the biggest hug, and she held me so tight. And she whispered in my ear, she said, "Thank you for making me feel seen."
Wow.
And it's in those moments when you realize, forget the academics. I'm not seeking their approval. I'm not trying to, be in their volumes anyway. We're talking about people who are hurting, who are living it now, who are aching to hear their slang, their vocabulary, their vernacular, to see their stories reflected, and to see themselves validated. And particularly for our Afro-Latinos, one of the things that happens is we don't amplify their voices enough. There are wonderful Afro-Latinx poets who, I read and I look to. But then also, when those of us who are not Afro-Latinx people, non-Black Latinos, go to write, it is important that we are mindful of who we leave off when we speak. And it's amazing where, if you do include these people in the picture that you paint, and they see themselves as a part of the photograph that you, the light-skinned Latino, painted, they go, I wasn't erased. Because they spend a lot of time dealing with white Latinxes who don't give a crap about indigenous Latinos or Black Latinos. I mean, it's really, the xenophobia is strong, and the aspirations to whiteness within our community is deeply rooted. And so to buck that, and to step into a space where you say, no, all voices matter here when it comes to talking about our experience, so you're no less. And if I have the opportunity to mention you, I will. And if it's not my turn to talk, I'll give you the space. And understanding where my privilege and the nuances of it, where they exist, and when I am able to amplify and boost those signals, or when I'm able to take what I write, and regardless of what academics say, still have a place for people of all shades under the umbrella of Latinidad, is really what the purpose of Latinidad should be. But instead, it's so divisive that it's almost better not even subscribing to that notion anymore, because it creates too much erasure. And I would say celebrate our communities.
Yeah,
and all the things, right?
Celebrate that shit.
So it was moving to have that experience and to see her reaction Because to most people, still to this day, seeing someone who is black but speaks Spanish is like this thing that they can't understand. They're like, what is this? This is like oxymoronic, or you know, how that, you know, and so to go into what the heart of that is, and to tear it apart, is a very large part of what the book ended up being. Is tearing away at these notions of what identity should be based on what people said. The book that I'm writing, which is titled Blackbird Exposed to the Wind.
Blackbird Exposed to the Wind,
yes.
People.
So I'll be
on the lookout.
Yeah, I'll be finishing
Okay,
it up.
what is your Instagram? How can the people find you?
So my Instagram is pursuing arete, like it sounds like earrings, but it's actually Greek for excellence. So pursuing excellence. Pursuing
arete, the whole word?
The whole word altogether. No. So
or arete?
Arete.
Oh, okay.
Arete means excellence in Greek.
Okay.
And so chasing excellence is what the name means. But pursuing arete, PURSUINGARETE.
Cool.
It just sounds like earring in Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I had somebody ask me, they were like, "Are you talking about the earrings?" And I was like, "Sure, man. Hoops are important. So, you know, cycle of life. I'm down with that too." Like. They just looked at me like,
oh, hoops are important.
Yeah, they're like, the sacred hoop is a thing. Like I'm
ladies, hoops.
Like that's an indigenous concept. Like it's totally cool, you know. But
it's interesting.
I was like, but originally, where I originally got it from was the Greek word excellence. It just happened to have a double meaning. And so I was like, well, that's a win. But anyway, that's where you can reach me.
So tell the people about the next part of your journey.
The next part of my journey, I am
warrior you.
I get to go home.
Yeah.
I get to go home and spend some time in the Pacific Northwest with my mama. And I will be going up to Pasco, Washington, which is occupied Palouse territory up there in the eastern side of Washington State, about 4 hours east of Seattle. And I will work with the schools up there and perform some workshops with students, do some writing, collaborations with other artists, and take it easy, because I've been grinding out here in the Bay Area for a while. So I'll finish the book, and then I'll be able to put that out, so people will be able to go and purchase that as well. So.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
What is that process for you? What has that process been like, writing a book?
It's the most difficult thing I've ever done.
When did you start?
Yeah. April. Was it April? No, March. March of 2017. March 2017, I started writing this book. I had a falling out with a friend of mine, and this gentleman would simply. He would tell me his views. He grew up in Michigan, and he grew up in a place where, you know, he was a white minority, surrounded by people of color, and but he couldn't seem to see beyond that. And our conversations would end up in debates, because I said, you know, just because you grew up in that place where that was the case.
Excellence, it knew.
It did know.
Mas def, excellence.
Yes. Even though he grew up in that place, that's not the case for all people of color in the U.S. You know, so he had a very narrow view, and I was trying to show him what the rest of the landscape looked like, and he was unwilling to see it that way. And I said, if I stand with you and I show you, yes, this is true, and yes, you felt frustrated, but then speak to you on your privilege, and speak to you about the nuances of privilege, and speak to you about the privilege I have in my life that is conditional, versus the one that you experience as a white man, which has much less conditions, right? And then try to link that to show you how for other communities of color, these varying levels of lower degree of privilege affect how we move about the world, and you are unwilling to go there. And we get to the point to where essentially I ask you point blank to say Black Lives Matter, to own it, to speak it into existence, and he refuses. It led to the ending of our friendship. And so I was so frustrated by that, and I was so inarticulate when we were arguing, because I snapped. We were on Market Street next to Flying Falafel. People probably thought we were having a lover's quarrel. Who knows, man? We were arguing. I was top volume, and he said to me, he goes, "You're acting crazy." He goes, "You're acting absolutely insane. What is the matter with you?" And I was like, and so like, of course, I was like, "What do you mean? What's the matter with me? What's the matter with me? What do you mean?" Like I was so like out there, like just gone mad. And it's just like it was a very impactful experience, because I walked away in such distress, and he literally would not go there. He wouldn't admit that there was a disparity, you know, in America. And I said, "I can't deal with your blindness." And then I walked away. And he said, "Oh, come on, Freddie." And I said, No, you don't understand. This is permanent. I'm walking away forever. And he's like, "Oh, just so you know, Freddie, you're walking away from this. You're doing this." And I walked away. I walked for blocks and just blocked until I finally stopped. And I think I was somewhere deep in the heart of the mission where I stopped. I just caught my breath. And I sat there, and I was like, I don't even know how to like get what I feel out. I started crying. And so then I went home, and then I wrote my first poem, which I hadn't written. I'd had massive writer's block for years and years and years. This is the first time I picked up a pen in ages. And so it was freeing to suddenly have an outlet, but then like it all came flying out. Like it was like this open, you know, it was like the floodgates broke, and like, or the dam, you know, and just like it busted open, and like everything was gushing out.
It's interesting how this is something that I recently learned, that I can't change anybody, I can't control anybody, and I think that it has been really helpful to understand that, because it has given me more peace to know that people are going to be people, and no matter how much you try to tell them, hey, you should do this, you should change this, you should do that, they're not going to do it unless they really want to. And I look at my own life, and I understand that, you know, I don't like being told what to do, you know, because I've been told what to do my whole life. You know, everybody's always trying to tell me what to do, you know, since I was a little kid. It's like, do this, do that, lava los trastes, ve a limpia el baño, all these things that it's like always being told what to do. So I came to this point of, like, fuck this, like, don't tell me what to do. There's a certain balance that I want to cultivate within that, because it's also like, I can't really be like, don't tell me what to do, because, you know, there's also, I need to listen, I want to listen to my mom and have that respect, and my dad and all this stuff, but also knowing boundaries, right? So what I've been trying to cultivate lately is an aura in my space where I'm accessible, like I accept energy, and like, you know, if somebody seems, you know, really cool, or like somebody wants to come over and talk, cool, let's chat. But also having really, really strict boundaries, and knowing exactly when to pull them out and say, you know what, no, I'm not okay with this. So it's been really interesting to try to find that I guess balance of like, when do you put up your walls, right? Because I don't want to have my walls up all the time. You know, it's interesting how Donald Trump wants to build a wall, and something that an artist from here, from Hayward, Leticia has mentioned is like, the wall's already built. You know, we have walls around ourselves, like we have walls up already, and so how do you pull down the walls but also be able to protect yourself? And so it's this really fine line of like, all right, we have to kind of navigate con cuidado, and being able to see, like, with people, because sometimes people, like, at first they're really cool, and then you find out something, and it's like, oh shit, but I can't change them or tell them what to do, or like, I can only really take care of myself, really, and if I need to walk away, then I walk away. But But for you, you know, you're starting to write this book. You had this falling out with your friend, and you're starting to write this book. And so this book is about your life.
It's
struggles.
It's about growing up in the U.S. as a displaced Salvadoreño with indigenous roots. And what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And what does it mean to grow up in a hometown in the U.S. that pushed me to reject those roots, right? There was a pressure to do so, to assimilate, to code switch, to, you know, get to the point where, you know, you...
Hot Cheeto? I shouldn't, but I always do.
But, you know, but you're struggling because you want to still be true to yourself, but you don't know what that is. And that's what the book's about. It's about that fight to figure out who you are, and to find your voice amidst all the noise that tells you what you should be, and how much of what you are you allowed to be in what space and when. And
everybody's always trying to tell you what to do.
Oh, totally.
I always go back to that, but you know, people try to put you in boxes, like, oh, you're this, so you must this,
right?
You know, and it's like, no, can I just be like an energy that kind of floats in and out of wherever, based on whatever I want to do, you know, because as of late, and I was telling you this beforehand, I've been just trying to listen to my inner flow, like what is my gut telling me to do? What do I really want to do in this moment, rather than what do I have to do to make money, to please my parents, to whatever, you know. And a lot of, like, what I really like is that everything has been coming together slowly. Like I feel like there's these connections being made. Like, have you read The Alchemist? Okay, like The Alchemist, like you see signs and you mention something and then it happens. And even right now when you were explaining pursuing arete, what does arete mean? It means excellence. And then the Mos Def excellence song comes on. It's like, oh shit, like those are the types of signs that have been coming up in my life of like, oh, okay, like I'm heading in the right direction. Like, okay, like I brought this up earlier and then it's here and it's in front of me and all these things. And so just like manifesting that inner headquarters in Hayward, California, I said that hella weird, but we're here in headquarters and it's like, okay, I want a studio in Hayward, and it's like, but I don't have a studio, I don't have money, I don't have, and then the lady that used to live here moves out, and we're, you know, there's a spare room in my parents' house, and now I can use it to, when I do interviews, you know, so it's like, oh shit, like, okay, things are coming together, so for you, you know, talking about trying to find yourself and trying to really make sense of the world, what was that process like of coming from El Salvador?
To put it in simple terms, it was about graduating to the point where I could see with clarity how to go about reclaiming aspects of myself that were lost or stolen. And a large part of that is culture, and how much I, growing up, found myself deferring to fit in, because I grew up in a really unique situation. I was one of my family was one of the few Central American families of that town, and we were surrounded by lots of Mexican immigrants. A lot of them were part of the migrant farm worker programs up there, and some of them would come in seasonally and then leave. And so there was a huge, almost like intimidation that I felt, because, and I should be really clear, I have some of the most amazing, wonderful people in my life who are Mexicanos, and I love them like family. But there is a toxicity of nationalism that exists.
Oh, totally. Anti-blackness.
And full of anti-blackness and also
anything that's not Mexican.
Yeah, and in the hometown I grew up, this existed. And so, you know, and so I felt that. I was put in situations that were dangerous. I had kids bully me. They made fun of my long hair. I had much longer hair at that time. They called me Niña Fea. And so it was such a disorienting time. I'm new to the country. I don't even speak English. I'm like 5, 6 years old. I'm learning. I completely have the rug pulled out from underneath me in this new place. It's super cold. El Salvador is tropical. I'm like, I don't know this life. Like, I love sweaters now. This is a total tangent. But let me tell you about my old man sweater collection.
Tell me, please. You are rocking the shit out of that thing.
I became fascinated with sweaters when I realized the warmth they brought, and they've always felt like a hug to me.
Aww.
And growing up as a kid, when the rest of my family, like, we'd be opening gifts and stuff, and like I'd be excited about toys, and I don't think I've ever confessed this on camera, but like,
this is where the truth comes out. You're at HayStack Mujer TV.
Yes, in HayStack, and so I remember when I got the sweaters, when no one was around, I would just take them and I would hold them like this. Just like this. And I'd be like, oh. And because they felt so soft. And they felt like a hug. They felt like the hug I needed but never got, essentially. Because growing up where we grew up was brutal winters, extremely hot summers, hotter than El Salvador. They would get up into like the triple digits. And but it was also like a desert climate, and that wind, there was like these wind systems that would come in and shake houses and uproot trees.
Damn.
So you had all 4 seasons, which also I was like, I know rain, humid hot, tropical, so for me there was a lot of adjusting. And the community that we walked into had an established identity. The white people of that community basically thought of anybody brown as Mexican. That was the easiest way for them to go about it. Like, oh, everyone's just Mexican. Which fed into that nationalistic mentality. And so I came head on with that, like full on. And it was really hard. It was really, really hard to grow up in that space and feel like I knew who I was. So then I got really good. One of the things I did was my earliest types of performing I did as a kid was I would mimic voices and accents. And I got really good because I got really good at speaking English without too strong of an accent one way or another. And my mom's biggest concern was that I would forget Spanish and da-da-da. But my concern was being able to navigate these spaces that were not friendly. And in doing so, I ran into folks who were not so kind. And that really molded the way I perceived myself and what I thought I could and could not do. Because suddenly there were parameters imposed. Now that I'm older, it's totally different. And being able to be intersectional and realize that our communities don't run parallel to each other. They're Venn diagrams and they overlap. And what does that mean for movements of solidarity? What does that mean for unity when things are affecting all of us? And what value does that give to making sure that we call things out when we know that the things that are being perpetuated are not healthy or detrimental? And so it was a tough time during that time to be in that space. It was a tough time to feel like I had a voice. And so, as I grew up there, I eventually was like, I gotta get out of here, But a lot of that came from that, of wanting to revisit, how did I end up feeling this way about things? How did I, and then what are the complicated layers of who we are? And how can I best talk about that now that I'm needing to talk about it? This isn't just things that now I'm like keeping to myself. I was like, I gotta get this out somehow.
Get that shit out.
Yeah, so I started writing from that perspective of looking into the past of what had occurred and understanding that the younger me didn't have that voice, didn't see himself represented, felt himself erased, and had a light-skinned father who was still Latino and had a dark-skinned mother who was indigenous, and and that framed my worldview. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know. It really did teach me how to show up for others. Because I remember like having white Latinos growing up, basically being like, psst, fall in line, man. Like, look, the white people, like we can, if you just follow the rules, man, we can also, like, we can get better for ourselves, right? But it was at the expense of people who looked like my mom.
Right. Damn.
And I was like, that's where I draw the line. And they're like, what, man? And to them, it felt like betrayal. And to me, it was like, this is where I stand my ground. Because brown mama, you know, like, there's no, you can't deny it, you know, like, it, and I'd spent enough time as a kid getting made fun of because they would be like, how's that your mom? You know, because in the wintertime, I get a lot lighter. I call it the blessing of the browning season. It goes away in the winter, especially in places like Pasco where it gets gray and there's snow, etc. And like I get a little paler and look more like my dad. But then they would see my mom and be like, you know, how, right? And it hurt my mom. I saw how it would hurt my mom. Like, how do you mean it's not my kid? It's my kid. And I'd be like, how do you mean it's not my mom? Except that I say that as an adult now. What do you mean? Of course it's always been my mom. But part of what has become the book is an exploration of the self-hate that we adopt. And what happens when we bathe ourselves in that kind of hate. To reject your brownness. To aspire to whiteness for preservation and to want to fit in so much that you'll change how you behave in order to have all these people accept you, you know, but then your mom's looking at you like, wow, you're lost. And I just have to let you figure it out because there's nothing I can do. And that became an ever-present reality. So that's in the book too, discussing why I chose to behave in a way. At age 12, I wrote 2 pieces about it specifically that deal from my vantage point of dealing with colorism and how I judged my own mother for her brownness.
Wow.
And
that's your mama.
Yeah, and that's my mama, you know. But I did that because I let that need to be accepted by the community overrule, you know, the fact that she was my mom and that I love her and that, you know, I owe everything to her and opted to not be accepting of her. So I had to. Writing is the most difficult thing I've ever done, and getting to those pieces where I deal with those aspects of like dealing with my dad and dealing with my mother were definitely the ones where I was like, I'm gonna rip the Band-Aid. You know, to see if the stitches have healed, so I can remove them.
Yeah. I'm looking up this. I'm listening to what you're saying in terms of like that self-hate of wanting to keep all the pieces together, but it being you being in a situation where like you're being encouraged to, like, if you want to get ahead, you know, you have to deny a part of yourself to do that. But there's this really, really good book called Pocho by Jose Antonio Villarreal, which I was looking for the quote, but it pretty much said there was this part where the father's telling his son, that if it doesn't, it's pretty much talking about self-hate, you know, like the dad is an immigrant from Mexico, and this is like in the early 1900s where the setting is, but it talks about how the father's talking to his son and he's telling him, if it doesn't bother you much, don't forget that you're Mexican, you know. And it really touches on that self-hate of like, be who you truly are, you know. Love yourself fully, even in a world where that tells you, you know, like, you know, forget about yourself. But con eso, we're gonna take a break, so we'll come back. No worries. Thank you so much for stopping by and for being here, sharing your art, your plans, your manifesting things. You're making a book.
Manifesting. That's right.
The name of the book again, please.
Blackbird Exposed to the Wind.
Why that title?
So there's a couple of reasons actually. Growing up, my mom, despite how long of a road it took me to finally embrace who I was fully, my mom left me crumbs along the way to pick up, and one of the little Easter eggs that she left was calling me. She would say this phrase. She'd be like, "Y este viene con el ventarrón." No, she'd be like, "Este viene con el viento y se va con el ventarrón." Así.
¿Qué es ventarrón?
Ventarrón is the wind.
Oh.
Yeah. So so she would say that. She'd be like, "Este se va."
Mom could are the best.
Yeah, she'd be like, "Este viene como un ventarrón y ya se va." Y se quiso quedar. And I would be like, and I used to get offended that she would say that. I'd be like, "Man, I don't even want to be here right now. I want to do what I want to do and go where I want to go. And what about my freedom? You know, Chad has freedom.
Chad.
You know, like
the whitest name.
You know, like how come I can't do that? I always gotta stupid. I always gotta do what I'm told and blah, blah. So I've always felt, you know, that kind of frustration. And so the theme of the wind, also the Pasco, Washington, that area, the Tri-Cities area of Washington State is so, like, when the wind comes, it's like, it does shake the houses. Trees get uprooted. I mean, it's like, it gets intense. Yeah. And so there's always this ever-present wind. And when you walk in it, I mean, you're just, you know, it's like, you know, you're like, oh man, like it's instant exfoliation of your skin. You're just like, you know. So
you gotta pay for facials,
right?
It's all good.
So I was looking for what to call a particular poem, which actually became the not just the title of that poem, but the title of the book. Basically decided that I wanted to, you know, kind of find out more about the wind and you know, how I could write about it. And one of the exercises I did was, well, as I was thinking about it, I was like, what's in a name? So I looked up what the meaning of my name was. And I'd looked up the name of my first and middle name a long time ago, but I never looked up the meaning of my last names. And so Izaguirre, Merlos are my last names. Izaguirre is the last name of my father. Merlos is the last name of my mother. And I usually just go by Freddy Merlos just to, you know, keep it simple. And Merlos, however I'm feeling like saying it at that moment, like, to me, it's all the same. But I found out Izaguirre means exposed to the wind. And I looked up Merlos, and it means blackbird. The blackbird is, I thought so. I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And a blackbird is an Iberian bird. So we're talking about like the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal is that region. The name comes from, sometimes Merlos can be Italian, and Izaguirre is from Basque country. So I mean, these are like the widest names. These are like Euro names, right? I know now we think of those names as like Latino names. These are colonizer names, right?
Yeah, because of the colonization that happened. Oh my lord.
Yeah, so I thought blackbird and exposed to the wind. So I put those together, but I didn't want that to be the whole, the only part of the story. So in the book, there's a poem that I'm still yet to finish. I'm really close. But it's the signature poem of the book, and it's where the book gets the title from. It's called Blackbird Exposed to the Wind meets Torogoz. The Torogoz is the national bird of El Salvador. And it is the opposite of the blackbird. It is colorful. It has dazzling feathers. The blackbird is a stealthy black. And to me, those symbolize a life of having to code switch. And I spoke to my mom one day about the concept for the book, where I was going with the names, and she said, you know, what's most powerful to me about that is that you've been given a gift. It is a privilege to be able to code switch and traverse these various spaces. How you choose to do that will impact how your pueblo sees you. So it's a huge responsibility, what you do with those words. And a major part of that is understanding that the Blackbird allows you to walk into white spaces, right? And you've done a lot of that most of your life, having to adjust, and a lot of it was forced upon you, but some of it was by choice, you know. And she confronted me at an older age about, you know, the amount of rejection I gave her as a young adult. And as a kid, because of, oh, they make fun of my mom, I don't want them to make fun of me, why don't you learn English, mom, you know, that type of stuff. Wow. And she said, you know, that hurt me. And I understand now that in these Blackbird phases of life that you were in, that's how you survived. She goes, but what's great to me, what's uplifting to me is knowing that you have now, you've learned how to navigate the wind, and you know how it is to present your full self, which is the Torogoz. Wow. And who you share those luminescent feathers with is up to you, because those are beautiful. Wow. And not everyone gets to just come up and touch those. And the fact that she said that made me realize that our preservation of culture and reclaiming of ourselves is a crucible. It's a process, and when we go through that, we have to keep pushing forward so that we come out the other side fully ourselves. And it made me really protective of those feathers, of those, of what the Torogoz represents to me. The Torogoz is a bird that cannot be caged, and to me that spoke volumes. And so I wanted to have that be in the book. I wanted to have the Blackbird see himself as the Torogoz in a mirror. What does that mean when you see yourself for who you really are, and what happens when you decide to stop doing the other, you know, and you fully embrace everything about yourself. And so that was the journey. So I wanted to title the book Blackbird Exposed to the Wind.
That's really, really cool. And right now that you're talking about code switching, I'm thinking about the many times where I have felt like I can't use slang, I can't present myself in a certain way, especially when there's white people around, because they're gonna think I'm dumb. I need to be like, I need to know my shit, I need to speak perfectly, I need to do all these things so that people could really see me, you know, and respect me. And so I've been kind of going through this process of, and especially in starting my own business and in continuing to figure out my own artistry and like developing my own character. I have slowly, it's scary because it's like, but white people have power. Like there's this really big thing in my head of like, white people have power and I have to like change into like, for them. And I've been in spaces where like, I mean, people are like just, they are who they are. And I feel like, oh, I have to change to you. But it's like, have they ever thought about changing to me? Like, adjusting to me? Because I mean,
that's like the video.
I'm my own person.
That's like the video of the kid in the wheelchair.
Oh, yeah.
You know, about the inverted perspective, right? And what happens when we do make that inversion and we break down the separation. Because that's what keeps us apart.
I think part of it is just accepting ourselves, like for who we are, and that is a really long process. But hopefully, when you do get to that point and you start that healing, you start just taking everything, and just owning it. Yeah, that happened to me. Even if it's embarrassing, that happened to me, you know. And so that he sent me a video of what was the name of the video?
Oh, the name of the...
It was...
So this video...
I started crying.
my mom was like, you have to watch this. Yeah. And so then I sent it to everyone and their mom. Yeah. And was like, you should watch this. It's
yeah, so it's about this kid. So for folks that watch
it's a short animated film you can find on YouTube. It's called Ian. IAIN, Ian, and it's about.
Is it IAN?
Mm-hmm, IAN. And then and it's about Fundación Ian, which is for children with any type of special needs or disabilities. And it's about a young boy who is in a wheelchair who doesn't feel accepted by his peers in a playground. And from there, the animated short goes on, and it's kind of his journey of finding himself, and it's powerful, and I cried.
Yeah. The part where the fence evaporated, that made me think of the border and how like there's so many lives that have been lost on that border. You know? So it's really, really hard. Gloria Ansaldúa, have you heard of her or her work? She passed on. She was a Chicana poet.
I haven't heard of her.
So she talks about the border being like an open sore, right? And how on the skin, you know, and it's bloody, it's people have died, you know, just coming across. And it's interesting how it makes me think about how, but it's only painful for the people coming up to the north, not like if you're coming down, it's like, oh yeah, let's just go into Mexico, let's go into wherever, but for the people coming up for survival, it's a whole other thing, you know. And so in Mexico, when people migrate, they say, fue pa'l norte, o vas a ir pa'l norte, or whatever, like the north, right? And so it's just really interesting how but all of us are like America, like this whole
continent,
Western hemisphere, all of it is America, right? But then it's split up into different things. And then I had a friend point out recently that if you take a look at the map and like you see the border between Mexico and the US, and then you go to Europe and you see Europe, and then there's Africa and like everything below. It's like everybody like within the north is like living, like that's where you want to be, that's where you got to go, you know. But then everything below that is like, you know, people are fleeing violence, you know, especially. There's
a beautiful song by Ana Tijoux. Are you familiar with that artist? Ana Tijoux wrote a song called Somos Sur. And Shadia Mansour does a verse on it. It's in hip hop. It's in Spanish and I think Arabic. Because I think Shadia raps in Arabic. It might be Farsi. I'm not sure. She raps in her native language, and it is amazing. But that's the point of the song is that we are the South. You know, what does it mean to be part of that tapestry of the South, south of the border, and just the cultural vibrancy that there is as a result of it, you know, because that's one thing that I think about a lot is, despite all of this mayhem, there's this sense of celebration of life that we have that no one can take away. And despite that, despite all the things that, you know, all the rhetoric or whatever, you know, people, communities of color will find a way to rejoice. Because
music, dancing,
everything, because it's inherent in who we are.
You look at us, we're always partying. Not always.
So, but there's something that is inherently, you know, it lives in us, that desire to move, that desire to sing and celebrate, and I always like to think of it like, you know, we just probably annoy white people. like they're just like that annoyed neighbor that's just like, oh, shut up, stop playing your music, always with the music.
He's doing that like an old man.
Like all these people, the sounds, why don't they just, I don't get it, Beatrice, they just won't be quiet, you know, like always with the hip hops, like you just,
the hip hops.
You can't, escape the fact that no matter what, we're gonna find a way to sing our song.
We are vibrant as fuck, you know, we can't be contained. Our energy is just out there.
So that to me gives me hope when I think of the border and you know, there's a really wonderful poet online. She called it, oh my gosh, I wonder if I saved it. She called it.
And on that topic, after you share that, we're gonna talk about what music you listen to. You're sharing that Black Thought, Streams of Thoughts.
Yeah, Black Thought, Streams of Thoughts. Oxnard, the new Anderson .Paak album, and then I was listening to Brave Little
Oh yeah,
Brave Little Toaster because it had woke lyrics. So this artist on this poet is Ocean River Raindrop is her handle. She doesn't give her name in her bio, which is fine. She's a PhD grad in she has a PhD in Indigenous Studies. She is Kanin Kehaka. She's French and Dutch, and well, she wrote this thing that I just thought was so brilliant. And I totally butchered the name of her track, by the way. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she said she called it the colonial scribble. She wrote a caption for something and wrote that referred to the border as anything happening there is south of the colonial scribble. And I thought, that's exactly what it is. Someone just decided. And there was a whole project about how exactly it was going to get measured and where the mileposts were or whatever, but they did. They sat down and they were like, yeah, through here sounds good. You know, and that's not to say that there weren't people out there like actually marking the things and it wasn't a project.
Yeah.
Because I get that.
Yeah.
But in the sense of like what that thing metaphorically or figuratively does and the division that it causes in severing our connection from the indigenous communities north from the one south.
Wow.
You know, it's amazing how it's a little scribble, and yet this little scribble is determining whether or not people die, live, you know, whether they have a place to go.
Yeah, and in speaking about the people that are coming from the caravan, it's like there's people actually camped out. You know, it's like an actual like it's terrible conditions that humans should not be in. And I went to Mexico. Well, I went to San Diego to visit my family, but the border is like right there, you know, so I went to go visit the border and things like that. And so it's interesting how it's just a wall and it goes into the ocean too. It's like
on that side it just goes into the water.
What the hell? That was crazy.
It's super
so
weird.
That was like in I was in Imperial Beach. But then Tijuana was like right there, you know, and so it was just crazy. But another thing that I was gonna attach on was I started rereading Zorro by Isabel Allende. And she talks about how well in the story, you know, it talks about how like when the Spaniards came to California, that the indigenous people were so baffled by the fact that they would like draw lines and this is my territory now and like you can't come in here, like you can't hunt here, you can't this. To them in their mind it's like, but the land is the land, like why can't I just go to where I feel like I need to go, you know? And us as humans, like we deserve peace and dignity and being able to reach our full potential, you know, but there's some people that can and some people that can't, the haves and the have-nots, right? And so it's really interesting to see, well, who has the ability to do it and not.
I think that's always an interesting concept, and like what the conquistadors the conquistadors that were here in California, what they did to the people in the missions is horrendous. And the idea that suddenly we've cut the flow when migrations have happened for so long, that everything's compartmentalized. But then the audacity that you have to go and meddle in the little square. You told these people they could be in this little square And now you're going and messing with it. And then when those people leave those conditions, because who's going to live in that type of place, you know?
Exactly.
When they flee, then you tell them they're not allowed to go where it's logical to go because arbitrary rules, you know? And the one question I keep asking people is, what good is the actual border? People tell me about security all the time, and the question that keeps coming up for me in my heart is, how's that war on drugs doing? Because it doesn't seem to be having any type of solid impact on drug abuse in America. Like, stuff still coming here. People are still abusing drugs in America.
And also security from what? From other humans? What are you
I
securing
guess
from?
the thing. So immigration is at a net negative from Mexico to the U.S. Mexicanos basically stopped coming. They were actually leaving, right? Is what started happening during the Obama administration. A lot of that had to do with Obama's deportation
Deporter-in-chief.
with his deportation policies, right? So people are just in mass droves being left out. The ones that aren't leaving are with their families, but still in cages. So, you know, that's happening. And we have a surge, right, of unaccompanied minors that arrive, which I would hardly call an invasion, right? What drove Salvadoreño minors to leave? The export of MS-13 gang members from the U.S. to El Salvador, right? Because what does that gang do once it's established in El Salvador? It begins to siphon the young and absorbs them into the gang.
I used to work as a legal assistant for an immigration lawyer, and that was like the most eye-opening experience because I got to speak with people from El Salvador that would tell me like I had to leave because they were trying to recruit me and I was not having it, and they were threatening me and my life and my family, and it's like who's gonna stay in that situation? Like, what the fuck? You're gonna be out. What the hell?
So but the notion that they are the threat arriving looking for help, right? Of help from a situation that the U.S. created. U.S. manufactures this gang in Los Angeles and then proceeds to ship it
What do you mean
as
by
a product. Manufactured, created.
But like the U.S., how did that?
The U.S. interventionism policies of the 80s. That create the circumstances by which these kids leave, by Salvadoreños leave in the first place through the war, because the U.S. is directly responsible in the funding of the war, which the Civil War lasted from 1980
to 1992.
Yeah, and so during that time, there's a ton of Salvi kids that make their way into Los Angeles, who then, you know, have to survive and deal with the hardships of, you know, LA at that time. So they form gangs to like self-preserve and then slowly devolve into something, you know, more than that. And so bred here, right? Radicalized here, right? Because of U.S. interventionism. And then the U.S. under Reagan shipped those boys back. And as they did so, the gang then gained foothold in the country where they were not. And so then expanded, then got connected with other maras and other gangs and drug dealing cartels, and then expanded, you know, to have a worldwide reach.
Wow.
So you're like, that's a sickness, you know, and we created this situation now. So these kids were leaving. But even now, even with the caravans, you think about that and you go, well, what are these people leaving? And for there to be so much in America, this disdain, this rejection of helping these people is phenomenal to me. It's phenomenal to me because it doesn't, because at that point it doesn't matter how many statistics you throw at people, or like when you go back through the history and you explain, well, this happened because this happened because this happened, and so now we're here. For some of these folks, none of that matters. And then you realize it never mattered. All that matters is that they're brown. That's it.
So I would say, as a final question, so the Zapatistas of Mexico. They rose up in 1994 and they declared war on the Mexican government. They were really, really upset with the NAFTA policy that was going to be put into place, but overall general upsetness of like the situation in Mexico. But what I really like about them is that they have this idea of a world where many worlds fit. So for you, if you were the creator of the world, you know, and you could create whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
I guess how would that situation have played out in El Salvador? Like, what is the ideal situation for you of like this is what happens in El Salvador or in the world or whatever?
It's hard to, you know, because the easiest thing is to say conquistadors never come and indigenous peoples just live their lives, right? That's the easiest thing. But it's much more complex than that. And we had migrant folks who touched ground on what is now U.S. soil, traded with indigenous peoples and left. These are not, so it's suffice to say, the Mayflower is not the first contact that, you know, the East Coast tribes have with people from Europe. And you know, in the Caribbean, the indigenous tribes of the Caribbean had bartering and trade with the tribes of the mainland, and would come up, and it was in
so you're saying seasons. Before the Mayflower there was contact between what is now the U.S. and Europe, but
small traders that would come in and trade, right? So there's exposure. These tribes have exposure to people coming through and going, right?
This is before Columbus? Because I forget, the Mayflower is what?
The Mayflower is on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So up in
the Mayflower is the whole Thanksgiving thing, right?
Yeah. So those were the pilgrims. Right.
Because the Mayflower came after Columbus, right?
Yeah.
Because Columbus came first.
Yeah. But Columbus never went into the U.S. Columbus only went to the Caribbean. Yeah. Okay. So So there's history of migrations. Migration patterns, people interacting, right? And so I think that the real answer to the question is what is a border? When migration is so inherently natural for humans,
like the monarch butterfly.
You know, wouldn't we want then something that's driven more? And this is to borrow from Jose Antonio Vargas. Wouldn't it be better to have a society that's predicated on participation as definition of a collective, as opposed to, and not in exclusion of others, simply desired participation, as opposed to someone saying, well, if from here to here is us, and so because from here to here is us, we participate here, but you can only participate if you're white, you own property, and that's really it. Because women couldn't vote, black slaves didn't count, right, as full humans. So to me, that's such a, you know, malignant way to live. And I think it would just be better if we recognize that free movement is beautiful, and we shouldn't ostracize it, and go back to that, because ultimately the systems that are in place right now for profit, it's in their benefit to have boundaries, you know, to have defined parameters. But I think that's accelerating the rate at which we're screwing up the planet. So what good is that? You know, I think in my ideal scenario, borders are irrelevant, and to take from, like I said, from Jose Antonio Vargas of Define American, that there is a credence given to participation, and the question for us is, who gets to participate? And because one of the things that's being challenged now is the notion of birthright citizenship, right? And growing up as an undocumented, I lived undocumented in the United States for a long time, And one of my questions that I always have for people is, well, what did you do to earn your citizenship? Person who was just lucky to be born here. What did you do? Because you're telling me what I have to do. I have to learn the language. I have to want to do good here, want to contribute, whatever that even means, want to contribute. Be a good person, decent. And then the USCIS and Homeland Security say you can't get in trouble with the law, you can't break any rules, you can't have any blemishes on your record because it puts you at risk of being removed. And so I can't mess up, I can't be human, I can't be flawed, I have to be perfect, I have to speak the language, I have to jump through all these hoops, I have to pay an insane amount of money, and then after all of that, I have to renounce the country I came from and say that I'm willing to take up arms for this country in order to get to wave the little flag. What does that mean when we force people to go through all those hoops? But there are people here who never had to do a dang thing for that. There's something inherently wrong with that as definition of citizenship. And so for my worldview, it's like, is that worth keeping? I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like it's working.
Okay, creator. So free movement. All right, dope. So con eso, we have Freddy Merlos. The book is Blackbird Exposed to the Wind. You can find Freddy at Pursuing Arete at PURSUINGARETE.
Right.
Arete is excellence in Greek.
That's right.
Dope.
And a hoop earring in Spanish.
Woo! That's right. Or any earring.
Any earring.
Yeah, but any earring.
Any earring, yeah.
But hoop earrings.
But
I don't wear
hoop
hoop earrings, but girls, get it. Get that shit. Wear them to the ground. You have to. Pero con eso, thank you so much, Freddy, for being here.
Thank you for having
HayStack
me.
Mujer TV. Peace.